Hey there everybody, my name's Ryan, the official host of Reddit Voice, and today we're going to be looking at some of the top stories from r/ProRevenge. Before we do though, I'd really appreciate it if you could check out our playlist, hit that subscribe button, and that notification bell to stay up to date on all the latest videos. My mother finally got revenge on her abusive ex with his own paperwork. On my throwaway because my little brother knows my normal account and I don't want him to see what we did. This all started several years ago during my parents' divorce, but the revenge took place this November. Backstory: growing up, my father was an emotionally abusive piece of crap who got off of religious authority and controlling every aspect of our lives. We are kept isolated and made to fear the police/CPS to the point where we thought it was normal. After I went off to college, my little brother came out as gay and my father started beating him, unbeknownst to my mother and I. When my brother threatened to tell my mom about this, my father kicked the then 15-year-old out of the house. My mother was understandably horrified by this and tried to get my father to see sense, at which point he started hitting her. Long story somewhat short, I got my mom out, my brother went to live with friends, and divorce proceedings were started. It was nasty. No one wanted to go to the police. Father was friends with the local small-town cops. And thankfully, my asshat sperm donor agreed to a no-fault divorce. While my mom was cleaning out her stuff from the house under the watchful eye of her amazing co-workers, she found my father's discharge papers. This is where the plan started. You see, my father spent his entire 25-year marriage telling everyone that he was a Special Forces vet who had been awarded a Purple Heart and Bronze Star, which were both coincidentally destroyed in a house fire, along with all his uniforms and paperwork. But here we are with his discharge papers, and they clearly stated that he was given an other than honorable discharge after 4 years in the motor pool. Not wanting to be seen as the vindictive ex-wife, my mom quietly took the papers and didn't tell anyone for years after my father moved away to a new state to join a militia. When she finally told me, while tipsy the past year, we hatched a plan. Over the next few months, we snooped on social media to make a list of his former and current employers, family, major friends that we knew of, and his new church. She enlisted our extended family and I, my college friends from all over the country. In November, we each purchased Veterans Day cards and wrote out messages such as "Stolen Valor," "Motor Pool," "Pretender," etc. Everyone attached a photocopy of the page listing to his discharge. And then we sent them out on the same day from the nearest major cities with the return addresses listed as his current church. They arrived on around Veterans Day from Atlanta, Orlando, Washington, D.C., New York, St. Louis, Kansas City, Seattle, Portland, Los Angeles, Houston, Ontario, London, and Edinburgh. Immediately, my mother was swarmed with calls and emails from people who had no idea and couldn't believe he would lie like that, and "We're sorry for not believing you and my brother." My dipshit dad sent a nasty email implying horrible things if he ever could prove my mother did this, which she forwarded straight to her lawyer along with the nasty letters from his more vocal supporters. Now, most people in our hometown look at her as the battered spouse who walked out with her head held high, rather than the tramp who divorced such a godly man. My little brother has no idea we did this. He didn't want anyone to confront my father, but later told me he got a random call from our old pastor apologizing for kicking him out of the church over my father's lies. And I can finally sleep well at night with the knowledge that his reputation is in shambles by our hands. Revenge truly is a dish served best cold. Edit. Thank you for the awards. I'm glad my revenge could bring a few smiles. Scam me for $80 for cleaning on move out? I don't think so, Jack. TLDR at bottom. Background: about 10 years ago, my landlord died, or at least the person who owned the place we were renting. The property managers had been delightful, but whoever inherited wanted to sell, so the house was for sale. Enter a jackass. We'll call him Jack, who decides to buy the place. Now ours was the top floor, i.e. attic converted into a suite of a house. Less than 35 square meters, 375 square feet. The bathroom was literally where the stairs up to the top floor used to be. The place was tiny. Jack came to check out the place, as you should before buying a place. He had one of those Bluetooth earpieces in, and I can't even remember if he acknowledged us. He spent about 30 to 45 seconds in our suite. Next time we hear from him was about a month later. Apparently, he'd bought the place. He stops by to give us a notice of rent increase, effective in 6 months, legal minimum, from $485 to $795. The place is not worth that much. We say nuts to that and decide to buy a house, since what the hell, it's not much more per month. Surprise to anyone who's never bought a house, it was more than just mortgage payments. We give him all the required notice to move out. We move out and clean the place up really well, mind you. When my partner moved in, it was not especially clean. And we happened to have the move-in inspection, which mentions this. Jack decided to scam us for $80 of our damage deposit for cleaning. He doesn't provide the required forms, just says, "I'm going to hold $80 from your damage deposit for cleaning." We respond with, no, you're not." Jack, assuming we need the cash for our next damage deposit or bills, and we'll settle for anything. "Take this or I'm going to keep your whole deposit." Cue revenge. So he decides to just keep the whole deposit, $485. I file paperwork with the rentalsmen who, unsurprisingly after their investigation, rule in my favor. He's ordered to refund the whole deposit, but Jack decides not to pay. And the rentalsman doesn't have any enforcement powers. So I have to go to the local sheriff's office. They can send a legal demand letter to the deposit plus costs, but it'll cost me $100 to $150. I forget up front. Sure, go ahead. Jack decides to ignore the sheriff's kindly letter. Sheriff says that they can start proceedings to recover the debt plus costs, but I again have to pay up front about $250 and it might take quite a while. I guess most people quit at this point, being out of pocket $700. Throwing more money at the problem and maybe having to wait months didn't appeal to them. And there's also a chance you never collect. I chose to pay the sheriffs. They sent another, less friendly letter to Jack. But here's the best part. Now that they're recovering a debt, they're going to recover on all of the outstanding judgments against him. And apparently, he has tried this shit before. They send him another couple letters. Pay up or else. Jack chose else. Then they seized the title to Jack's giant white SUV. I can't remember what it was, but not a cheap one. They didn't physically take it away or anything, but they gave him 30 days to pay all the judgments against him, or they would take it and sell it at auction. Somehow, he all of the sudden found the money. My share, $480 plus $150 plus $250, $885. The other people who'd registered judgments but not paid to the start of collections proceedings were about $5,000 more. I can't remember how long the whole process took, at least 6 months though. Too long didn't read? Landlord tries to scam us for $80 for cleaning when we move out. Ends up costing him almost $6,000. Get me fired? Say goodbye to your bonus and promotion. This happened a good long while ago. I was in high school and got a job at one of the big box stores and computer department. This store chain had an in-house technician department, which was always where I wanted to go. After busting my ass in sales for 2 years, putting up with rude customers, silly rules, and all the other glorious trappings of a retail job, I finally got a chance to be promoted to the technician department. It was not as glamorous as I thought it would be. I quickly found out that most of the repairs consisted of running the prepackaged antivirus suite, updating Windows, and doing data backups prior to wiping computers clean and reinstalling them. I always liked tinkering with hardware more, but since 80% of customers had laptops, and those repairs were deemed too complicated by corporate, we would just send the laptops out to get repaired by a third-party vendor. It was still better than sales by a long shot, and we had a great team working in the technician area. Except for one dude. Let's call him Mike. He always seemed to behave like his crap smelled like roses. He was technically a lead technician, and even though that just meant that he had a little more authority, he had access to a corporate account to arrange shipments of computers to and from our store. He was acting like he was the manager of our department. Nevertheless, our actual manager was a splendid dude that took care of us and such. Mike's douchery did not bother any of us that much. Fast forward a little, and our awesome manager found a much better job. This opened up a spot for manager, and since the whole store supervision was going through a shakeup, the GM was fired for embezzlement, and all the people he hired, 90% of the managers, were under review. This led to everybody trying their hardest to not F up, and the new GM decided that since our department was one of the best in the district, he would not try to hire an outsider but will promote from within. Now, Mike was working at the store for almost 10 years at that point, and a couple of people that started working with him as sales associates were by this point managers and assistant managers. One of them, Brittany, was an assistant manager in charge of customer services and checkout. One of the conditions for Mike's official promotion to manager was to keep the #1 spot in the district performance-wise. One of the key metrics was the rejection rate from our third-party vendor. If we mistakenly sent them a software problem to fix, they would charge us extra. Mike started obsessing about the numbers, especially when it came to the rejection rate. He insisted that we would spend extra time to confirm issues, even when there were recalls from manufacturers for these items. I hated this bureaucracy, since it meant these people needed to wait almost the maximum allowed time to get their computers back. So a few times I skipped the extra diagnostics when I knew for sure the problem was hardware. One day, Mike decided to do an audit on all outgoing machines and found out that I've sent 4 units, skipping his extra checks. He told me that he'll write me up for it, but when he tried, GM told him that it is not a manager yet, and I have shown to the GM that I followed the corporate procedure in diagnosing these units. I thought it was the end of this, but I was sorely mistaken. Mike hated that I showed to a GM that Mike's procedure was inefficient and that he was denied power over me. About a month later, I got a call from Mike asking if I could come into the store on my day off because there was an issue with a customer. When I came in, I was greeted by Mike with a shit-eating grin, and he told me to wait in the back and not to work on any computers. After about an hour, Mike and Brittany come in and ask me to head to the front office. They started an official write-up process and claimed that I have made a mistake creating a backup of a customer's data and have placed a DVD with no data into the box that was returned to a customer and then wiped his PC clean. I knew that this was BS since I always copied the data to an external hard drive, run antivirus to make sure that nothing bad had got copied, and then burned DVDs. Yet, when I asked to check the external hard drive, Mike said that due to my negligence I was not allowed back in the tech area. He went to check the hard drive and said there was nothing on it. At that point, I knew he was bullshitting, but him and Brittany were hellbent on completing the write-up. I've asked for a senior management to be present and was shot down again. Turns out the GM was on vacation. They completed the write-up and told me that due to the egregious error that cost the company tens of thousands of dollars, I was not allowed to work in the tech room and I would be relegated back to the sales floor. I told them to shove it and submitted my resignation on the spot. I later found out that a week later they gave the customer the data that was on the hard drive all this time. Mike simply erased the DVDs. I grabbed a DVD RW by mistake for that backup and waited for the customer to come back and complain. I've also called the corporate HR line and told them what happened. They said that since I quit with a letter of resignation, they would not launch an investigation, but they have received and recorded my complaint. Good at hardware tech, but not writing Reddit posts. I landed a job at a shop that did hardware repairs a week later and started in another week. Turns out that this depot was the service center that covered the entire district and they had the master contract with the big box chain where I worked. Since I have worked with the tech in that store, I was more than familiar with their labeling and ticketing system. For tracking purposes, the label included the store and technician number. After a couple of weeks, I gathered some goodwill at my new job and started trading the units with my colleagues to work on as many units from my old store as possible. Over the next 3 months, I made sure that every single unit sent in by Mike would come back with an extra charge. Also, it turned out that Mike, since he was in charge of shipping, would sometimes steal other technicians' tickets to boost his personal performance numbers to secure that manager promotion. Well, that bit him in the ass hard. There was one week in particular where he sent in over 15 units out of 20 to get fixed, and 15 came back with extra software charges. I've also kept detailed records that proved that Mike did not follow his own policy of extra checks. When the performance figures came in for that quarter, the store crashed into 5th place from number 1. Mike missed out on his promotion and a big bonus that was promised to him. A good buddy of mine from that store got the manager position in a few months after that. I have explained to him how to reduce the number of software charges to almost 0. So he looked like a superstar. Mike was first relocated to lead technician, then he was either let go or he quit. I'm not sure. Last I heard, he started his own mobile technician business that folded after a year. What I didn't know is that this whole incident with Mike effing up led to the GM to review everything Mike did, including my write-up and dismissal. As it turns out, they did not even register the write-up since I quit on the spot and buried it. The only way GM was able to find it is because of the HR complaint that was filed against both Mike and Brittany. GM was not pleased that they went behind his back to get rid of someone and fired Brittany. He was a very decent man who called me later that day and apologized and even offered me my old job back. I thanked him, but I was making more money at the new place and did not have to deal with customers, so I passed. Too long didn't read. Douchebag and his friend create a fake reason to get me demoted. I F up his stats to deny him a promotion and a bonus. And I also got his friend fired. Thanks for the gold. And that, my friends, is all the time we have for today's stories. If you liked them, you could check out some of our other stuff and even subscribe to keep up to date on all the newest videos.